Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor, and today I will be completing Jill Valentine's journey in the remake of Resident Evil. Prior to now, pretty much all the members of Jill's law enforcement team called Stars, well, they are now deceased due to the run-ins that they had with the undead creatures around the Spencer mansion. In fact, it is those undead and mutated creatures that forced us into the mansion to begin with. The few known Stars survivors are Jill, Barry, and Wesker. Jill is the main character, so she is awesome. Barry is acting weird and suspicious. And Wesker wears sunglasses at night, and I feel like that's pretty much all you really need to know about him. Jill has gone undefeated against zombies, undead birds, bees, dogs, and even giant snakes, sharks, mutant murder plants, and even gorilla-sized reptilian creatures that are called hunters. Now, during all of that surviving, we found out that the pharmaceutical company Umbrella made the virus that turns normal people and animals into the monsters that we are facing, and that company lured the STARS team here on purpose in order to test their creations. They're just basically wanting to see who will win in a fight. Now, that pretty much sums up all the major details that we have experienced all the way up to this point in the story, and now it's time to wrap up the game. There are not too many places left to explore, so we're going to be checking out all the remaining options. This episode is going to include us exploring the caves around the Spencer mansion and facing the final challenges of the playthrough. In the end, we are going to be beating the game in this episode with Jill. Now, the very last thing that I did prior to saving and ending the very last episode was narrating a letter that was left behind by the architect of the mansion. His name was Steve Trevor. Wait, no, it wasn't. Steve Trevor is the guy from the Wonder Woman comics. His name was George Trevor. And I wanted to bring him up again because he ended up dying trying to hide from Umbrella because he was one of the only few people who knew about the secrets of the mansion to include all the puzzles. And his family ends up going through a pretty large amount of tragedy at the expense of Umbrella and the Spencer family. And we are going to be exploring the remaining details of that tragedy in this final episode as well. So I just want to throw that reminder out there. But yeah, the dying details of George Trevor were the last things I read prior to ending the previous episode. And his family ends up going through a pretty large amount of tragedy at the expense of Umbrella and the Spencer family. And we are going to be exploring the remaining details of that tragedy in this final episode as well. So I just want to throw that reminder out there. But yeah, the dying details of George Trevor were the last things I read prior to ending the previous episode. And I took a little bit of a break, and now I am back. I loaded up that save, and we're ready to briskly head to the very end of the game. We're heading into the third portion of the game, in my opinion. And that's going to be the final one. That's mostly going to include the caves and one final area. The caves being something that George Trevor even references in that last diary entry. But before we go there, I went ahead and made a quick pit stop on the balcony above us in the second floor of the mansion. This is an area that's been available to us for a very long time, but I avoided coming up here because, well, while there is a powerful weapon up here, the grenade launcher, I really didn't want to have to juggle it around in my inventory until I absolutely needed it, and the time has finally come. In order to get the grenade launcher, we go up onto the balcony and we find the deceased STARS member Forrest. I believe he's part of Bravo team, but even so, these STARS members tend to know each other even if they were not on the same team, so Jill has a little freak out moment. And when it comes to Forrest, it's very important that when you pick up the grenade launcher, you immediately leave the way you came. Do not proceed forward into the balcony and investigate any further, or Forrest is going to get up and become a zombie. And he acts a lot like the Crimson Head zombies, where he's very fast and pretty strong. So getting away from him is kind of difficult, and it's going to take a good amount of bullets to take him down. Granted, you just picked up a grenade launcher, so it wouldn't be the hardest thing in the world, but it's probably better to go ahead and save those explosive rounds for more important enemies that you do actually have to fight, when instead you could just avoid Forrest entirely. But yeah, Forrest ended up getting killed by zombie crows, which I think is one of the only times I've ever seen anyone actually being killed by the crows in Resident Evil. They are an enemy in multiple Resident Evil games, but I don't think I've actually seen anyone ever fall victim to them before, with the exception of our friend Forrest. I'm not sure if that's really a distinction that you want to have, but he has it. And I am just making note of some supplies that were left behind by Barry. I consider taking them at the moment, but then I decide not to because I'm going to be backtracking through this area eventually anyway. And I'd rather not waste the inventory space because I might be cutting it a bit close once we actually reach the caves. Also, it is interesting that whenever you play as Chris, going to see Forrest really is not worth it. Like, Chris does not have access to the grenade launcher like Jill does. So since there is not a very strong weapon to pick up from Forrest, there's really not a reason to go see him whenever you play as Chris. So during this playthrough with Jill, that's going to be the only time that we go to visit Forrest. In my next playthrough with Chris, I'm definitely going to be leaving that out because, well, Chris is overall a more challenging playthrough for a few different reasons, and that tends to make getting the under 3-hour time frame a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to be cutting him out and anything else I can in order to make that 3 hours. But we'll get to that whenever we actually play as Chris. We are still playing as Jill, and we have everything we need to progress on to the caves. We just have to navigate back through the dogs, back to that little pool of water area where we used the crank to raise and lower the water. And then we have to go back to that little intersection where we could go to the residence and then put in that battery, use the elevator, go back to that crank area, use the crank to refill the water, go back the way we came, go back down the elevator, and suddenly the waterfall we created from manipulating the water is no longer there. And then we can proceed into the caves. Oh, and pretty much every step of the way we're avoiding dogs and snakes, so good luck with that. Although I feel like dodging the dogs and the snakes isn't the worst thing in the world. There are a couple of snakes that lunge out at you and are kind of really annoying. But after a couple of playthroughs, you tend to remember where they are, and that's the hardest thing in the world to dodge, even though I still screw it up from time to time. Like, I did get bit by one snake, and then I also got attacked by one dog on the way here, so obviously not perfect by any means. They can definitely still get you, although overall, for as many times as I had to pass through those areas, I think I did pretty good avoiding them. And after my efforts to avoid them, I now find myself finally in the caves. And it's time to go visit another STARS member.
Is that you, Jill?
Is that voice Enrico's?
Yeah?
You're alive!
Stop! Are you with anybody, Jill?
No, but why?
The stars are finished. Someone is a traitor. Umbrella set us up.
Enrico! Traitor? Who?
Alright, I hope everyone had the opportunity to grow very attached to Enrico and then suddenly have him ripped away from us before he really had any moment to impact the plot, other than letting us know that there is a traitor. Which, considering pretty much every ally character that we have in this game is acting really weird, yeah, I think they kind of gave that one away already. But we'll see exactly how that unfolds as we progress. Enrico happens to be holding a different kind of crank. I think his is the octagon crank and the other one is the hexagon crank, although I could be wrong about that. In any case, they are different, and you need the one that he has in order to progress through the caves. And I went ahead and equipped my grenade launcher because things are about to get a lot more hazardous in these caves. We're talking a bunch of hunters and something else as well. And man, I am starting to not be very good at this playthrough. Got bit by a snake, got bit by a dog, got slapped by a hunter. Yeah, we need to start reducing some of that because I'm going to start burning through my healing items here soon. And yeah, this is a resource management game before anything else, so that's not a very good position to be in. So yeah, Jill, knock it off and stop getting hit. Alright, inventory management time. We don't need the old crank anymore. We only need the one from Enrico, and we're not going to be needing the shotgun for anything for the foreseeable future, especially in this cave. The grenade launcher should get us through pretty much everything that we can possibly encounter. So yeah, we're going to get all of that out of the inventory, give us plenty of space to pick up anything that we may need along the way to include some more healing items after getting slapped, and some key items just to progress through the plot. And yeah, we're going to end up using the crank from Enrico to turn ourselves into an earthbender because we're going to be literally reshaping the walls of this cave in order to get through it. Like, there's a lot of weird design for the Spencer Mansion and its surrounding area, but this is some crazy shit. I really want to know how George Trevor went in here and manufactured rotating cave walls. Like, please show me the plans for that. Oh, and now we have the very next hazard in this cave that I kind of forgot about, and that's going to be the Indiana Jones boulders. So on more than one occasion, we're going to have to go ahead and harness all the energy we had when we were playing through Crash Bandicoot and find ourselves running from the boulder and just trying to survive. Which fortunately I do. It feels like avoiding these is not too bad in the remake. Alright, so this even more massive spider than usual is named Black Tiger. Which, naming a spider Tiger seems like it's going to be giving it all kinds of an identity crisis, especially when it's a giant zombie spider on top of just being a spider that's named Tiger. So due to all the emotional and mental turmoil of having that identity crisis, we're going to go ahead and put down the zombie spider with Jill. It seems like the merciful thing to do while it's having a psychological zombie spider breakdown. An interesting thing about Black Tiger is that you can completely avoid this boss battle. Now, I believe it's designed that you are intended to defeat the spider, and then once the spider is defeated, then you go to the webbed up door, and then you use a knife or fire if you're, a person with a fire weapon, which will come up whenever we're playing as Chris, but for right now we're playing as Jill, so she has to use a knife. She can cut through the webs on that door, and then go through it after defeating the spider. The thing is, you don't actually have to defeat Black Tiger before you start breaking up those webs on the door and escape. You could leave Black Tiger alive the entire time and go through that door so long as you manage to get the webs taken out before, the spider takes you out. Which, due to the odd behavior of the spider enemies, is actually easier than it sounds. So yeah, this is a very easily avoidable boss battle, but I intend to do every single boss battle at least once. So I'm going to go ahead and defeat Black Tiger with Jill, and then I'm going to skip him with Chris. Or her with Chris. I actually don't know if Black Tiger is a male or female. It really doesn't matter. The giant zombie spider. We're going to avoid the giant zombie spider with Chris because he's going to be struggling to get the under 3-hour time frame. With Jill, we have a lot more leniency, and that's why she is going to be the one to take down the giant zombie spider. And now we find ourselves in a puzzle room after defeating Black Tiger and also after dodging another boulder. Which I'd say the second boulder is easier to dodge than the first one if you know it's coming because you just have to run a few feet forward, rather than having to run all the way down a corridor. So yeah, overall the boulders went really, really well. Although I seem to remember that back in the original Resident Evil, maybe it was the fixed camera angles, I'm not sure, but for some reason this area caused a lot of resets for me. Although in the remake it really has not been an issue whatsoever, so something about it's definitely easier for me. Anyway, I should probably explain what exactly is happening with this puzzle. The idea here is to get this statue on that circular pad in the floor and then use that to rotate its direction. Using the other statue in the wall at the other end of the room as a frame of reference, we know that we have to have the statue facing a specific direction to match that. And then once we have the statue facing that direction, we push it all the way to that wall but opposite the statue that's already there. And then once both of those statues are in place inside the wall, we'll have access to a hidden item. And that hidden item is going to be related to the elevator that we saw just before we found Enrico and before he died. And yeah, once we have the statue in place, that little container in the wall is going to open up and it's going to be a shaft ring or something like that. We need that in order to get the elevator working and to find our way out of this cave. So with that being said, we have to backtrack our way through all the chambers in this cave that we previously traveled through, which I'm on very low health, so that's mildly concerning. And that's because even though I'm low on health, there are still hazards along the way. Similar to what happened with Enrico dying, there should be a hunter popping up in this room where they weren't previously. Actually, where's the hunter at? Okay, maybe I'm mistaken about that. I thought there was a hunter that popped up in this room after you got the hidden item and started backtracking, but apparently not. So, okay, easy enough. Back to the typewriter room. We can go ahead and re-inventory everything and then find our way back to the elevator and progress on to the next part of the cave. All that worrying about my critical health for nothing. So, okay, up here is a really small puzzle. And you're going to go to the elevator power source and pull out the elevator shaft parts, and then you're going to combine it with the ring that you found earlier in the statue puzzle room. Once those are combined, go ahead and examine the parts. Once it's combined, you'll see that there are Roman numerals on the gold shaft part and the silver ring part. We're going to want to focus on the Roman numerals on the silver ring because those are going to indicate the order of the buttons that we need to hit in order to restore power to the elevator. So yeah, after quickly combining and examining that, you know exactly what order you need to go in, you hit the buttons, and then you're able to ride to the next area.
Jill!
Barry? Thank God you're safe.
You too, Jill. A noise I heard brought me down here, but I didn't expect to find a place like this. Have any idea as to what might be at the bottom?
There's only one way to find out.
What the hell is that sound? It could be a person. Jill, go check it out. We had enough surprises for one day. I'll stay here and secure our escape route in case something happens.
Okay.
Okay, and while Barry decides to bravely stay behind and leave us alone to go investigate a strangely familiar moaning and groaning, we will find that the moaning and groaning belongs to lisatrevor, the individual from the cabin that knocked us the fuck out earlier in our playthrough, and we haven't really seen since then. I have no idea what she's been doing to kill the time, but she's here now and that's all that matters. While we were separated, we've seen plenty of letters, notes, journals, whatever, from her father, George Trevor, and his little crazy experience trying to escape the Spencer mansion after they decided that he was disposable, and they elected to just kill him. In the end, we found out that he did not survive his attempts to escape, ultimately being trapped and assuming that he starved to death, but who knows. Now, one thing that those journals did not elaborate on too much is what exactly became of Jessica and Lisa. Jessica being George's wife, Lisa being his daughter. Now, we know that they got captured at some point whenever they returned to the mansion from the aunt's funeral because somehow George recognized her heels, his wife's heels sound. It's kind of a loose reach, but whatever. In any case, the daughter and the wife were captured, and we see what became of Lisa, even though I don't know if the game has actually revealed that this is Lisa yet, so I guess maybe spoiler for this ancient game.
Barry!
And alright, we now see that Barry is back to acting sketchy as hell, nothing out of the ordinary there. At least he is being very, very consistent. And we'll get more information on that in the very near future. But we are going to be finally getting our answers about what exactly occurred to Lisa after her father was forced into hiding and died, and her mother were captured. Before we get the answers about Lisa and the answers about Barry, though, we have a little bit of another puzzle to solve. We have to get out of here. So Barry took the elevator out of here, so that route is no longer available to us, and whenever we ran around the whole little Lisa circle in the cave, we saw that there was one dead-end area where we pushed a crate onto an elevator, and, well, here it is now, getting crushed and giving us a new item. That item being a flamethrower, a broken one. But also while we're running around the lisatrevor circle, we may have seen a platform that could hold what looks like a weapon about this size. So what we are going to do is return to the lisatrevor circle after we get the broken flamethrower, and we're going to find our way to that platform in order to get out of here. Now, two things need to occur in order for that to work. First thing we need to do is run to a lever on the wall in the Lisa circle, and whenever you pull that lever, that rack that is about the size of this weapon will come down and allow us to put the weapon on there to support the, I guess you would call it a gun rack lever. And after we do that, that should unlock the door directly beside it, and we should be able to get out of there. Now, one thing that's worth noting whenever it comes to the lisatrevor circle is that whichever direction you decide to go in first is always going to be wrong. And what I mean by that is regardless of the direction you decide to go, whether it is right or left, the first direction you decide to go in is where Lisa is going to pop up every single time, at least in my experience. So you want to go the direction that you don't actually need to go first, get Lisa to appear there, and then run backwards in the opposite direction, the direction you actually want to go. That way she does not block the path you really want to travel. So I'll have her pop up in the opposite direction of where the lever is, then I'll run backwards and then go back to the lever after she appears, and then I'll take the long way around the entire circle to get to the door, put down the flamethrower, and then once the door is unlocked, just get out of there. Because Lisa is not going to follow you outside of that circular room. And then we can finally start getting some answers about Lisa. And the remaining answers about Lisa mostly come in two different locations, one of which is in the decorative box that we just picked up in that little, I guess, living area for Lisa that's kind of in the sewers or the bottom portion of the cabin. And the last piece of information on Lisa is going to come a little bit later. Like, not a lot, though. We're probably going to be there in like 5 minutes or less. Which, that being said, there's really not much left of this game. We just got out of the cave area, which means there's really only one new area left in the entire game. And to get there, it's just going to require us to backtrack to the Spencer mansion, but not very far into it at that. We're going to be going back to the Grand Hall, and we're going to be going behind the staircase. Because behind the staircase, well, it turns out there's another passageway that we have not explored yet. We just needed 2 stone and metal objects in order to open it, and finally we have, well, parts of one that we can combine together to make one whole one, and on our way back to the Spencer mansion we can pull the one that we used to open up the outside area from that little mechanism. Yeah, we have the metal object portion of the other, but we're missing the ring for that metal object, and it is inside the decorative box that we picked up in Lisa's little dwelling area. But yeah, we can take that ring and we can combine it with the metal object to make the stone and metal object. But not only is there a ring in the box, there's also a picture and a note. So we will finally get a little bit more story on Lisa Trevor. I eventually open the box and then fly through the note left behind on the photograph of the family, but here's what it says. So it was titled A Family Picture and Notes. There's something written on the back in reference to the picture. There is a date, November 10, 1967, and it states progenitor virus administered. The test subject is named Jessica, and they were administered type A. And there's an additional note saying, plasmalizing of tissue during cell activation. Virus fusion, negative. Action, disposed. And then it references another test subject, this one named Lisa. Administered virus type B. Plasmalizing of tissue during cell activation. Virus fusion, positive, but delayed fusion. And under body modification, they noted that they observed constant results. And there is a status listed as well, and it states continue protective observation. Now they also reference George here, and specifically there's an action in reference to him, and it is terminated. November 30, 1967, so we now know the day that George died. Now in addition to all the virus test notes, there's also a journal left behind by Lisa. Now, here's what it says. November 14, 1967, I feel dizzy after the shot they gave me. I don't see Mom. Where did they take her? She promised we would escape together. Did she escape alone and leave me behind? And then the next day, November 15, 1967, I found Mom. We ate together. I was very happy. But she was a fake, not my real mom. Same face, but different inside. Have to find Mom. Have to give face back to Mother. I got Mom's face back. Nobody can have my mom except me. I attach her face to me so she doesn't go away. Because Mom's sad when I meet her without her face. And then a couple of days later, November 17, 1967, but the 6 is left out. So things are starting to get a little bit illegible. From inside box. Scent of mommy. Maybe true mother there. Stone box hard. It hurt. Steel rope in the way. Can't see mother because 4 stones. And that's where the note ends. So we confirm Jessica was disposed of after she failed the tests, so she's dead. Lisa was kept alive because her tests were somewhat successful, and she's been on a journey to find her mom ever since.
Jill, you're alive. I was worried, because I thought you were...
Start talking.
Calm down. I didn't want to do it. Believe me, I can explain.
Don't lie to me!
No time to talk. Jill, hand me my gun! Thanks, Jill.
Alright, we'll just go ahead and have a complete change of heart with Barry, despite the fact he was just holding us at gunpoint. Sure, you can have that gun back. Anyway, this is our final boss encounter with Lisatrevor. And after having just narrated her note, this area should sound familiar. There is a big stone case in the middle of the room, and there are 4 stones being held by metal chains. Sounds a lot like what she was describing in that note, so keeping that in mind, we're going to go ahead and push these stones off the ledge until all 4 of them are gone. And if we investigate the stone casket, we will find one final note in relation to Lisatrevor and her mother. I'll narrate that in a moment. I'll just go ahead and chat with Barry one final time before we leave this area.
I don't believe that thing's really dead. Leave this place up to me and go on ahead.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, sure, why not, Barry? We just won't acknowledge whatsoever the fact that you were holding me at gunpoint like maybe a minute and a half ago. I guess that's not important. But what is important is the conclusion of the Lisatrevor story, so let's go ahead and get back to that journal. It was titled A Family Picture, but it also had a letter. To my Lisa. Day by day, I can feel my consciousness drifting further away. The shots given to me by the men in white clothes made some of Mommy's itching go away. Today, they gave me another shot saying it was nutrition. When they give me the shots, Mommies can think straight, but Mommy's shocked and sad because Mommy's unable to think of you all the time. Mommy's afraid of forgetting everything, especially the memories of you and Daddy, what your faces look like, how we used to be together. They're all starting to disappear into somewhere dark in my mind. Oh, Lisa, I wish I could touch your face and hold you in my arms right now, so that I can hold on to our wonderful memories of you and Daddy. Lisa, we can't stay here any longer. We have to escape. Listen to me, Lisa. Our chance to escape is the next time when we go to the lab together. We'll both pretend that we are both unconscious. And when the man in white clothes is off guard, that is our chance. When we're on the outside, let's look for Daddy together. Okay, sweetie? Be strong, Lisa. And it is dated November 13, 1967. Signed, Jessica Trevor. Now, I'm not sure why, like, that middle portion of it starts to get a little bit illegible, but then the rest of it is written super clearly, but yeah, that was probably one of the very last things Jessica wrote before she died. And with that dialogue, we have kind of a completed story for Lisatrevor. Her father died while trying to evade and escape the mansion. In the meantime, her mother and her were experimented on with different versions of the virus. The version her mother was given did not yield the results that Umbrella wanted, so she was disposed of. And, well, we found her remains. But Lisa was not as fortunate, at least not for a very long time. She was given the virus, she yielded results that interested Umbrella, so they kept her alive. To keep her compliant, they gave her people who looked like her mother to convince her that her mom was still there and wanting her to comply with what Umbrella wanted her to do. She didn't fall for it and started ripping off their faces because she was losing her sanity and believed that they had stolen her mom's face and she needed to hold on to it so that she could give it back eventually, and she wore it so she wouldn't lose it. She did eventually find her mother, but her mind was so far gone that when she found the stone casket that held her, she could not grasp the concept of her mother being dead. And on top of that, she could never move the stones by herself, so the casket remained closed for decades. It wasn't until our boss battle, where it was a lot less about fighting Lisa and a lot more about helping her, showing her the truth and giving her that closure, that the stones got pushed aside, the casket opened, and she saw the remains of her mother. And seeing her in that skeleton form, she finally understood and could wrap her head around the concept that her family was deceased. And at that point, Lisa just gives up and jumps off the ledge, presumably to her end. So yeah, that is the story of Lisatrevor, and it's a really good subplot for this game. There are a couple of them, like Rebecca's subplot with Chris, and Barry's subplot with Jill, stuff like that, but I'd say the Lisatrevor one is by far the best in the game, and is a very welcome addition since it was not part of the original game. Just overall a very tragic character and a welcome addition to the story. Anyway, I went on a little bit of a tangent there with Lisatrevor, so I kind of need to catch up to where we are in the game and what I'm doing. So immediately after the boss battle, I went outside and found a fountain where I put the 2 medals I found in the Wolf of the North, Eagle of the South books, and I put those in the appropriate statues. Whenever I did that, it opened up the pool and I found an elevator that took us down to this basement lab. Presumably, this is the same lab that Jessica was referencing in her little note. After evading some zombies and going deeper into the lab, I went into an X-ray room. And this is a puzzle where if you pick up the X-ray results and put them all on the board and flip the switch to where there's red light, you can see parts of the X-rays are illuminated red. And then there's also a body chart on the wall that breaks down what each of the organs are. And the puzzle here is figuring out which ones are illuminated red, taking the first initial for that organ, and then seeing what word they can form. And that's going to be important for determining a password for the computer later on. Also, I end up picking up a note. The note is regarding an individual named John and an individual named Ada, 2 people who are apparently in a relationship, John being a researcher here in the lab, and Ada being his girlfriend. Now, the name Ada is going to be very important in the next game, but for right now, it's just a random person in a note. So, keeping that in mind, we know there's going to be a password related to the organ pictures. And whenever it comes to the username, we can assume John or Ada might be one of those usernames, and the other name might be the password. And if you did assume that, well, you assumed correctly. So after putting all that information together, we ran to another room, hopped on a computer, put in the information, used John as the username, used Ada as the password, logged in. One door has an additional password protection, so we go ahead and type that in. That's going to be the one that we deciphered using the organs, and that password is going to be the word cell, C-E-L-L. And then suddenly we have all the doors unlocked that we need to in order to progress through the lab. The first of the unlocked doors that we go to is going to be one that contains a machine that disperses nitroglycerin, or something of the sort. And while we were in that room, we picked up a film reel, and we also dropped off the MO disc. It's going to be one of 3 that we drop off and some specific disc readers. The reason for that will become clear a little bit later. And after we had the film roll, we navigated back up 1 floor, and then we went into a room with a projector. Well, actually, before that, we picked up an MO disc that was on a desk, but then we went into the projector room. Once we were in the projector room, we picked up 1 more MO disc, and then we put the film reel into the projector and took a look at the slideshow. The slideshow was of all the various different infected creatures, to include the dogs named Cerberus, the shark named Neptune, and also a diagram of the tyrant that was referenced in one of the notes we found earlier. Oh, and at the very end of the slideshow, we have a picture, typical workplace stuff, but one of the people in that workplace photograph should look very familiar. And they should be looking familiar because he's kind of the only person that we know that likes to wear his sunglasses at night or indoors and pretty much at all times. In the organic bioweapon team picture, we saw Albert Wesker, our team leader, on the far right of the photo. Oh, and at the very end, there's a barcode with a number on it. That number is going to be used on the keypad to unlock a secret area in the projector room. But yeah, this picture reveals a lot. Mostly that Albert Wesker is involved with Umbrella, so we're going to have to deal with that at some point in the near future. But yeah, after using the keypad and unlocking the hidden room, we go ahead and pick up another laboratory key that's going to be useful for unlocking 2 more doors in the lab. Oh, and we also played the video that we found earlier in the game. It was the one that we found on the body of Kenneth. Now, there's nothing really too spectacular on there. Unfortunately, the only thing that we see on the video is him being eaten. So we get to see the moment that he died. After holding on to that video for basically the entire game, I was kind of expecting more. But I guess we got to witness the most horrendous moment of that man's life, so I suppose that's something. So yeah, we used the key to unlock 2 different doors in the lab. One of which was a morgue where we had to climb through the vents so that we could put 1 more MO disc and a disc reader, which just leaves 1 more disc reader and MO disc to go. After that, we ventured through the other unlocked door, which seems to be some kind of a generator room area. And there we found a bunch of spider monkey related enemies that we went ahead and took out. Now, normally I've been dodging a lot of the enemies rather than taking them out, but in this case you want a clear path because we found a little generator of some sort that requires a unique type of fuel, which is where that whole nitroglycerin, well, it's not really nitroglycerin because it's a fuel, but the whole nitro component room comes into play. So we're going all the way back there to pick up some sort of a nitro compound fuel that we're going to walk all the way back to that generator. I do mean walk because it is very volatile. If you run, it can explode and kill you. And that's why you want to clear a path, because the enemies can also hit you and make it be very volatile and, explode and kill you. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. You can take some hits from some enemies, The key thing is that you don't run away from them, and I'm not really sure what firing a weapon will do whenever you're carrying that fuel, so it is just better to have a clear path. However, I've definitely screwed up and forgotten an enemy or thought they were deceased when they weren't, and then found myself in kind of a tough situation where I had to take some hits returning that fuel. So don't be like me, make sure it's clear, and then enjoy your walk all the way back unimpeded. And alright, this slow walk is almost over, we're almost there. Actually, now that I think about it, I was referencing the fact that you might have to take some hits if you forget an enemy. I forgot that this is a playthrough where that exact thing happened. So yeah, you're gonna see me fire a weapon at least once, so it's not gonna blow up on you immediately. And I also end up taking some hits from the spider monkey creature. But fortunately, I have plenty of health, and I managed to creep my way, just taking the hits all the way back to the generator. And then I immediately got rid of that fuel as quickly as I could, and then progressed on throughout the generator room. But yeah, that easily could have gone wrong a few different ways, so it's very fortunate that it worked out well, because it definitely could have been a run ender, or at the very least I would have had to have reloaded back to that second save point and having to do everything in the cave, the whole lisatrevor thing, just all that all over again, which I really thought was going to happen, especially when the creature grabbed me by the neck and was just holding me off the ground as it was holding onto the ceiling. But yeah, having to reset due to something like that, when you're this close to the end of the game, sounds awful. And alright, we'll go ahead and drop off the very last of the MO discs here, and that means a room somewhere in the facility just unlocks. Now we just need to restore some more power for the elevator, and then we're heading on to the very end of the game. But yeah, that reset back there, if it were to have occurred, would have really sucked. Now I have attempted to beat the entire game in one run without saving whatsoever before. I have done it successfully, and I've also failed at it really close to the end of the game. So I can definitely say dying and having to start all the way back towards the beginning, it's kind of one of the worst video game feelings in the world. And even though this scenario would not be nearly as bad, it's still kind of frustrating. So yay, that did not happen. And alright, the elevator now has power, so we're gonna go ahead and get out of this generator room and just dodge our way around all the spider monkeys. Which I have to say, looking back on this footage, this is probably one of the very worst attempts I have had at going through the generator room. Like normally the spider monkey enemies are really easy to dodge. More often than not, they just run right by you. But I was just making a bunch of mistakes and giving them the opportunity to actually, figure out what they were doing and hit me, and I took a lot of hits from these guys. Which is kind of crazy, because I can't even really remember any issues with this previously. In fact, in the remake alone, I don't even know if they have hit me any other time. So it's kind of funny that one of my worst times going through the generator room happens to be a playthrough that I'm recording and putting on the internet. Oh well though, that's fine. Hopefully Chris does a little bit better than Jill in that regard. But yeah, we have a few cutscenes coming up here in just a moment, so I'm going to be going silent for the immediate future. Once we get to the elevator, the cutscenes will start, and this will really begin the conclusion of the game.
Jill!
Barry,
You could have at least waited up for me,
let's go. Wesker!
Thank you, Barry.
Well, what do you know?
Oh, don't blame Barry for everything. I hear that his better half and 2 lovely daughters will be in danger if he doesn't do everything I tell him to.
Wesker, you're pathetic.
Well, you shouldn't worry too much, dear. You'll be free of all this anyway.
Why eliminate stars?
Believe it or not, that's Umbrella's intention.
You're just a slave of Umbrella.
Smart girl, but I think you misunderstand me. The things you mention are nothing. I'll burn all of them along with this entire laboratory. Barry, go up on the ground and wait there.
Barry.
You gotta love Barry. He must really be afraid of Umbrella.
You and Umbrella took his family, you bastard. Oh!
Umbrella? Well, I used some carrots and sticks to cow him, but it had nothing to do with Umbrella. I just used Barry for my personal interests. Though both you and Barry seemed to think I was following Umbrella's orders.
What? What are you planning?
I guess it's time for show and tell. It's magnificent.
For the sake of this thing.
You know, I hate goodbyes.
Barry!
Forgive me.
No, you're not to blame. It's Umbrella and Wesker.
Even if it meant my family, I couldn't bear turning my back on my friends again. Shit! Damn it!
Jill and Barry together. In hell.
You want a piece of me?
What? Premature.
No, Barry! You viral cultured freak!
Viral cultured freak might be the oddest insult I have heard in a really long time. In any case, we are now facing off against the Tyrant, who managed to give Wesker the backhand of doom, and this is a pretty easy boss fight. It honestly kind of reminds me a lot of Yawn the Snake. All you have to do is just run around a circular arena, and every time the Tyrant comes around a corner, you pop a few shots off, then you continue to run around the ring until he's back in your view, shoot again, and just never let him get close to you. And yeah, you just run in circles and shoot until eventually he falls down and you win.
Barry! Barry! You're okay.
Jill, sorry. That was careless of me. Wesker.
He's gone.
First, let's just get out of here.
So yeah, we ran around in circles just enough times to defeat the Tyrant, and now Wesker is also missing. I guess that means we still have a little bit more to do before the end of the game. But that only really includes escaping and then facing the final boss battle of the game. Fortunately, this is not truly the final battle of the game, so we don't get stuck with a really crappy final boss battle like that.
Self-destruct system has been activated. All personnel must evacuate immediately. Deactivating and releasing.
Wesker must have set it off. Let's hurry.
All personnel must evacuate immediately. Deactivating. Self-destruct system has been activated. All personnel must evacuate immediately. Deactivating.
As we make our escape, we are going to have rapid fire cutscenes, so I'm going to be cutting in and out as those end up showing. But we do have a little bit of time here, so I'm going to go ahead and communicate the next objective. If you recall, we ended up with 3 MO discs that we put into 3 different disc readers, and something unlocked somewhere in the lab. Before we evacuate and save ourselves, we're going to check out what that locked door was and what is behind it. And I have to admit, around this point in the game was when things started to feel really tense for me. Because my goal was to complete the game in under 3 hours, and while I did not have an exact measurement of time that had already elapsed, I knew it was very close, like within a couple of minutes. Which made unlocking this door especially frustrating because instead of just pulling down all 3 levers since you unlocked all 3 of them, we have to go one at a time, just chewing up all the remaining time that we have, so I was not confident that I was going to be able to complete this in under 3 hours, and I was starting to worry I might have to do the run over again.
Has been activated. All personnel must evacuate immediately. Deactivating and releasing all locked.
Jill,
Chris, you're okay.
glad to see you are too. Anything on Wesker?
We'll talk later. First, let's get going.
Activated. All personnel.
And yeah, there was really no hinting at it throughout the entire time we have been playing this game, but it turns out Chris was alive. And not only was he alive, at some point Albert Wesker found him in the mansion, I assume, and then somehow took him captive and locked him away in here. I guess that could have happened almost instantaneously after Barry and Jill ended up leaving the room at the very beginning of the game, and that's why Wesker ended up disappearing. That kind of makes sense, so I'm just going to run with that, but there really was nothing hinting at this throughout the entire time we were playing the game. In fact, there was really nothing that even indicated why the MO disc was so special to begin with. So if you weren't just going out of your way to try and find what that went to and then just kind of messing around and also finding the remaining discs and doing the same thing, you could easily just miss this. Like, it's a pleasant surprise to find out that the other member of our team is still alive and we can save him, but we had no way of knowing that's what we were trying to build up to with the MO discs. Like, we had no idea the stakes were even that high. But yeah, fortunately for Chris, I am trying to save every single member of the STARS team that I possibly can, so congratulations, you get to live through this game. Well, assuming Brad has not crashed the helicopter or something like that.
This is Brad. I'm running out of fuel. If there's anyone alive, contact me now or just give me a sign. I repeat, this is your last chance.
And if I do everything correctly from here, we should end up finishing the game with Chris, Jill, Barry, and Brad as the 4 survivors of this incident. Speaking of Brad, it is fortunate that he has not flown away yet, but I can't help but wonder why he has not radioed in for more help, considering that he saw us getting attacked at the very beginning of the game and has just lingered around, not knowing the whereabouts of everybody else. Like, Brad, did you not think we could use a little bit of help here?
3 minutes to detonation.
Damn it! We're almost there! Jill, you just get in contact with Brad.
No!
We can make it. Jill, ladies first.
Chris!
Would you let me have my moments too?
All right. We'll rendezvous at the heliport.
Alright, we're almost done with the rapid fire cutscenes. All we have to do is get to the very top, reach the helipad, find some flares, shoot up the flares so that Brad can see them, and then, signal to him that we are done with all the undead crap in this mansion and we want to go. Then again, I did mention that we do have one final boss battle to go, so...
Jill!
You made it!
So, gee whiz, if you do not interfere, the tyrant will pick up Barry and kill him. So yeah, you can actually let Barry die here, or, I mean, if you fail to do enough damage, not necessarily let him die, but fail to save him. Yeah, I did not know that for a long time, but apparently that is a thing that can happen. Which, on top of that being really bad for your ending, it also kind of sucks for this fight, considering that Barry does help to provide some pretty good damage on the tyrant. So, oh hi Chris, didn't see you there. So let's not let that go to waste. Anyway, yeah, we get Tyrant Round 2. Unlike the first time around, the Tyrant actually does a pretty good job of chasing after you from time to time. Yeah, he still does his leisurely stroll throughout most of the fight, but eventually he gets tired of that crap and sprints at you and also tries to give you the backhand of doom just like Chris over there. So yeah, being in a position where he can kill the person helping you, he actually chases after you and does good damage to you. We also have a timer that we're trying to beat. And knowing how epically we end up winning this fight if you are successful, this is a much better boss fight than the previous time that we saw the Tyrant. Like, this one is truly deserving of being the final boss. Could it still be more challenging? Sure, but I think this is pretty good, especially when compared to what came before it.
Jill, use it! Kill it, whatever it is!
Well, thanks, Brad. It's about time you did something useful in this game. And don't worry too much about Chris over there. He is still alive. He's just probably a little bit concussed after taking that backhand. Come to think of it, the head trauma from that might be how Chris rationalizes punching boulders in Resident Evil 5.
Jill, you did a fine job.
Thank you, Wesker. And the game comes to its conclusion after Jill uses the rocket launcher to shoot and blow up the Tyrant. And then not long after that, the entire mansion explodes as well. And yeah, I knew I was cutting it close whenever it came to getting under 3 hours for this game, and I was definitely right. In the end, we managed to finish the game with just about a minute and a half to spare, clocking in at 2 hours, 58 minutes, and 28 seconds. That would be a time good enough to unlock any of the items in the game that have a time requirement to them. Most notably, that would mean getting the infinite ammo rocket launcher. This kind of a playthrough also unlocks a few other things. You probably saw those pop up in the background. But yeah, that is the Resident Evil remake whenever you start playing through it as Jill. Next up, I'll be playing through the entire game again, but this time as Chris. And also, I'll be putting it on the hardest difficulty since that's now available to us. Which is definitely going to be interesting considering that Chris is the harder of the two characters to play through the game with. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I feel like there are probably a lot of people that agree with me out there, and I'll be sure to explain why whenever we start the game with Chris. But even though I know it's going to be pretty challenging, I'm very confident that I can do it considering that I have done it before. It was one of the requirements for Platinum trophying this game. And I skipped it earlier in order to cut down on the time, but I'll go ahead and play the credits now since I do want all the people who worked on this game that I had the opportunity to enjoy to get credit for their work. And I'll go ahead and use the credits running as an opportunity to go ahead and give my final thoughts on Resident Evil, or at least my final thoughts on Resident Evil whenever I played through it as Jill, and what kind of happened in this playthrough. I guess my first thought is it's always fun to revisit the Spencer Mansion. Regardless of the amount of time that passes between when I play this game, the mansion always has a certain tone to it. It is just that classic Resident Evil feeling of unease. Especially if you haven't played in a while and you don't really remember where all the resources are or how many you're going to need. It kind of brings back that old feeling of never really knowing if you have enough resources like bullets or, healing items to get through the next area that you're about to try and enter. And that is just a fun feeling and very classic Resident Evil. And then it was cool to get to see all the enemy varieties again. In the past, I didn't really have a whole lot of trouble dodging certain enemies like the dogs and the spiders and things of that nature. Or the spider monkey zombies. But for some reason in this playthrough, I ended up getting hit by a lot of those. So it's kind of funny that, whenever I finally got around to recording this, that's when those enemies started to kind of give me some problems. Which is actually kind of fun for me because I took these enemies that I thought were kind of just free to get by. And then suddenly they were giving me a little bit of a challenge. So besides just getting to see a really good variety of enemies in this game, and there are quite a few. I mean, you had the zombies, you had the dogs, you had sharks, bees, plants, hunters, crows, although I didn't fight any crows, I don't think. But you get the idea. There's all kinds of things running around in this mansion. And there's just a really good variety, and it was good to see again. And then ultimately the game ends with us discovering who the true enemy was. It was Albert Wesker. And with his sunglasses permanently grafted onto his face, he was just as campy and, over the top as ever. Just pure, maniacal, cartoon villain evil, and I'm perfectly fine with that. They never really changed that about Wesker now that I'm thinking about it. Which they never really changed that now that I think about it, because in Resident Evil 5, he's even more over the top than he is here, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. But yeah, really I have nothing but positive things to say after having played through the game as Jill. Now all that's left is to go ahead and pick up the game one more time with Chris. So if you ended up enjoying this playthrough as Jill in Resident Evil, feel free to check out the next one with Chris, but for now I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Take care, and hopefully I see you next time.